Good afternoon. Today is Wednesday, February 22nd, 2023. I hereby call the Elections and Campaign Finance Subcommittee to order. Madam Secretary, please take the roll.
Representative Burkhart.
Here.
Representative Doggett.
Present.
Representative Haynes.
Here.
Representative Miller. Representative Moon.
Here.
Chairman Crawford.
Present.
Chairman Rudd.
Here.
Chairman Rudd, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Do any members have any personal orders before we begin? Seeing none. Today we have 9 bills on the calendar. We'll do some housekeeping here. Item number 1, HB 1045 by Kiesling has been rolled 1 week. Item number 2, HB 183 by Whitson has been rolled 1 week. Item number 4, HB 169 by Wright has been rolled 1 week.
You're on a roll, Mr. Chairman. Keep going.
Let me find my place so we can proceed. We're on item number 3 by Lafferty, HB 0871. We have a motion and a second. I believe you have an amendment.
Oh, I left my glasses. Hang on one second. Sorry.
I'm going through the same issue.
Yes, sir. I
your-
have amendment number 3701.
That's what we have. Do I have a motion? Is this make the bill?
I believe it does.
It does. Yeah, since it makes the bill, to hear a motion to put on the amendment. We have a motion and second. All those in favor of attaching the amendment, say aye. Opposed, nay. We have the amended bill. Please explain the amended bill for us.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Committee. It's pretty straightforward. Several years ago, the legislature decided to put an end to voting registering to vote and then voting on the same day. The intent of this bill is to clean up something that got skipped over. Occasionally on the calendar, it aligns in such a way that we do end up having 1 or 2 days on the calendar that will overlap where you can register to vote in the morning and then vote immediately after that. This seeks to clean that up. We're taking from 29 days. Sorry, let me just read it to you. It's so short. Well, I said it was so short. The Election Commission may begin the voting at the nursing homes 27 days before an election. It used to read 29 days before the election. So we're just going to clean that up and tighten up that spot.
We have a question on the bill. Seeing no objections, we are voting on HB 0871 as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Bill moves on to full local.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Committee.
Next on our agenda is item number 6, HB 0817 by Davis. There. What's? Oh, one moment. What's this? Oh, I'm sorry.
We can just come back.
Oh, okay. Mind if we proceed? I didn't see Representative Ritchie in the room. All right, we'll proceed on with item 6 and go back to item 5. We have a motion and second on the bill. Do you have any amendments?
Yes, sir, I do not.
All right, tell us about your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Committee. I appreciate it. Essentially, this is a bill. It's removing the sections B and C from 6-53-110 of TCA. And so what that does is then it then returns those elections to that controlling TCA of how the districts and the people that can vote in those districts. And so we're wanting to ensure that people that are in a district in that geography, that those voters vote for that district representation in the primary and then also in the general election. And then if it's an at-large seat, same situation. They vote for that representation in the primary and also in the regular election.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, with any objections, we'll proceed on to vote on HB 0817. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Bill moves on to full local.
Thank you, sir.
And now back to item number 5 by Representative Ritchie, HB 0118. Have a motion and second on the bill. You have any amendments?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and I request for a roll call vote, please.
Okay. What's your amendment?
Amendment number is 004122.
That's what we have. Let's see, does it make the bill?
Correct, yes.
All right, it does make the bill. Want to go ahead and attach the amendment before discussion? All those, I have a motion and a second on the amendment. All those in favor of attaching the amendment, say aye. Opposed, say nay. Goes on the bill. Tell us about your amended bill.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. Today I bring House Bill 118, which is a referendum process for local municipalities with the amendment that we just put on there. It only addresses city council and county commissions. So in the November election of next year, it'll go on the ballot should this end up passing. And what it is allowing the citizens to do is vote on whether there should be a 16-year max on county commission and city council races.
Any questions from the Chairman Doggett?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and sponsor. Would this, if the referendum was to pass and a county selected 16-year term limits, would there be anything that would prevent a person who had served 16 years on the county commission from sitting out a term and then running again and being elected for another 16, or would that be their one shot?
Go ahead.
Yes, so it's a 16-year term limit. It would be the max. It would not preclude anybody from finishing out their existing term. So hypothetical, November rolls around, a particular municipality, the voters there vote for a 16-year term limit. At that point, somebody that got elected in November, if say it was for a 4-year seat, they would finish serving out that 4-year seat, and then they would be term limited after that.
Any further questions? Chairman Moon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to the sponsor. Do you have another bill that's filed that addresses term limits?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I have it's not another bill. I have a House Joint Resolution constitutional amendment that addresses the governor being term limited to 8 years, because currently our governor can, per the Constitution, can serve 2 consecutive 4-year terms, come out of office, they can go back in. So that constitutional amendment will put 8-year term limit on the governor and 16 years on our body.
Mr. Chairman, follow up.
Yes.
Does that HJR not address any other office holders?
Not with the amendment that's been filed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Answer my question. Thank you.
Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Based on Chairman Moon, are we talking about a different bill than what we're looking at now? Is that something different?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, there's 2 pieces of legislation. We've got HB 118 that's in front of us right now. This only addresses city council and county commissioners. The constitutional amendment is how we would end up putting 16-year term limits on the General Assembly, the
Okay,
legislature up
thank
here.
you, thank you.
Yeah, Chairman Moon had asked him, was he carrying another bill?
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
Mr. Chairman.
yes, follow up. Go ahead.
Yes, just follow up on House Bill 118, maximum 16 years. Currently, Memphis, Shelby County, by referendum, City Council, I think there's 2 4-year terms. So that's the maximum. And same thing in the county commission. So if this were to pass, how would that impact what we are currently doing?
Correct. So my understanding, like with Shelby County, Metro here, Knoxville, there's several that have something in their charter or where they've already run a referendum for having term limits. This is just putting a ceiling. So if they've got a 2 4-year term limit on there, so 8 years, that would still be what they would be held to. This is just the process of taking it and making it to where there's a 16-year cap. That would be the maximum length.
For those communities or cities or municipalities or county that currently does not have a term limit?
Correct, is my understanding on that.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Burkhart.
A couple questions. Thank you, Chairman. So you're trying to do a 16-year term limit. If somebody is serving their 16th year, are they, according to your bill, are they out, or does their 16 start with the next election? Their first, the starting their 16 years, is it starting with the next election?
So to answer the question, so it's not, I'm not attempting to do a 16-year. This is a referendum process. Over 78% of the population across the state of Tennessee is in favor of term limits. So what this is doing is it's putting it on the ballot, asking those voters, do you want a 16-year max at the city level or at the county level for your council or your county commission? Anybody that gets elected when that is on the ballot, should it end up passing in the affirmative, what would end up happening is they would be able to serve out the remainder of that term, even if they're beyond 16. So hypothetically, you've got somebody that's been elected for 60 years, they get reelected in 2024, their county commission takes it and approves this, they would finish that out, so they would have 64 years.
Chairman Crawford.
Thank you. Yes, question for the sponsor, and then I may, if I don't get if we don't know, then I'll ask if we could go out of session and hear from legal. But can we not, can the cities and stuff, and as Representative Miller was talking about Shelby County there, can we not do this now?
Go ahead.
Local level has a referendum process. They can't end up doing that. What this will end up doing is just putting it on the ballot in all 95 counties to give the citizens across the state of Tennessee that are concerned and in favor of term limits the option to be able to say yes or no versus having to go around and sign the petition. So this body could end up putting it on the ballot.
Okay, I guess that's what I'm trying to figure out. Why do we need to create a law? We got enough laws that we can't enforce them now. Why would we want to create a law if they already have the ability to do so? So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry.
You had a follow-up, Representative Burkhart.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I know like Clarksville is 12 years max for city council, but I'm going to go back to what one of the previous speakers asked. They set out 4 years and they can come back and run another 12. Is this set up that way or not? So,
No.
so if you serve 12, that's it?
This would be the 16-year unless the local district ends up going through the referendum process to change it. And that language is inside of the bill so for them to be able to change this. Should it pass in the affirmative and then they decide down the road that they don't want it, that language is in there for them to be able to pull it back out.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Follow up. Thank you. I don't think I like that. I think I like the referendum. I like all that. I like putting this final say in the hands of the voters. Two parts I don't like, and then I'll be quiet. I don't like the part of if somebody's already served. I don't think those years should count. I think they should start with the 16 years. I think they should start from the next election forward. I think everyone I've ever been involved with, that's how the calculations were, and I don't like. So I don't love that part of it. So anyway, thank you.
Chairman Doggett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and excuse me, I'm reading over this. I see a portion in here in the language that talks about residents of a municipality within a county may vote, but I do not see anything, and it talks about the unincorporated areas. I don't see anything about the county, how the county votes in here. It spells out specifically for the municipality. Did I miss that in there?
So my understanding is what'll end up happening, it's spelled out. Maybe we can go out of session and have legal address that right there, but it's in there to where, so for myself, for example, I live in the Maryville City District. So the language in there talking about the municipalities and that, I would have two questions for me, whereas somebody that only lived on the Blount County side would only have the one question. Should there be term limits at the county level versus me being the city limits, I would have city question and the county question.
With no objections, we'll go out of session to ask legal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Josh Houston, Legal Services. So, Representative Doggett, I believe you're referring to subsection B of the amendment, and it says that residents of a municipality within the county can vote on the question voted on the county legislative body, but the people who live outside the cities cannot vote on the term limits for the city legislative body.
Any other questions of legal? Seeing none, we'll go back into session. Is there any other questions of the sponsor? Well, we're on the amendment. Huh? We're on the bill. We've already attached the amendment. And I wanted to give him an opportunity to close, and we'll vote if that's no objections. All right. Do you have any further to say on the bill? Then we'll take the vote.
That's it. I would appreciate the support from the committee. Thank you, sir.
All right, Madam Secretary, please take the roll.
Representative Burkhart? No. Representative Doggett? Yes. Representative Haynes? No. Representative Miller? No. Representative Moon? No. Chairman Crawford?
No.
Chairman Rudd?
No.
6 nays, 1 aye.
Sorry, the bill fails.
Thank you, Chairman and committee.
Next up, let's see if I can get back on track here, skipping around. I think we'll be at item number 7. We're next up is item HB 0173 by Representative Chisholm. I have a motion and second. Please tell us about the bill.
Thank you, Chairman and committee. I have brought to you what I will call the Magna Carta of bills. I got that from a fellow member of West Tennessee. So this bill, as introduced, it requires the Election Commission to include 3 non-binding questions related to the legalization of marijuana on the November 24th ballot. It requires the Secretary of State to compile the results of public policy opinion poll and forward the results to the members of the General Assembly. This will not change the law. It'll just merely get a gauge on what the people think about this subject matter. As you all know, there's been a lot of talk, a lot of debate about whether or not medical marijuana should be legal, whether or not recreational, and whether or not marijuana is good. So no matter how we may feel about it, I think it's important to ask the constituents of Tennessee about this particular subject matter. The 3 questions that would be on this particular legislation is, should the state of Tennessee legalize medical marijuana? Yes or no? Should the state of Tennessee decriminalize the possession of less than 1 ounce of marijuana? Yes or no? Should the state of Tennessee legalize and regulate commercial sales of recreational use marijuana? So those are the questions that would be on the ballot, and I think it's important to ask our fellow Tennesseans what they think about this subject matter. And with that, I stand by for questions.
Chairman Crawford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I definitely think we should be engaged and talk to our constituents about matters such as this, but our ballots are getting so long now, a lot of people not even completing the ballot. They vote for a few spots and then they don't even go any further. And to me, this is a federal issue, and so I think it should be held at the federal level. But there's nothing wrong with us doing a poll or, something like that. But I don't think the ballot's the right way to do that. Thank you.
And Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I look at the date of 2024, and we just finished an election, which all the judiciary judges were on the ballot, as well as DAs, and that is exactly what made it a very, very long ballot. But of course, these positions of judges and DAs, they are 8-year terms. So we're not going to see a ballot, well, certainly in Shelby County or Memphis, of that magnitude for a long time, This is an unofficial poll, and there's been a number of unofficial polls that have been discussed for years in this state. And what you hear is that maybe 70 or 80% of the people would say yes to these 3 questions. This would be unofficial, but it'd be the closest thing to being official that's out there now. And when we talk about the federal government issue, it's no longer a federal government issue. If you're looking at 25, 30 states that have made decisions on, if not one, but both of these issues. And from time to time, we've done it in many cases where state government has said, it's our issue, we're going to take it, and we're going to respond to it. And I think this is an issue we should take and respond to. I don't think it's a downside on it, especially from the standpoint of the federal government. If we decide to pass this and put it before the voters, the federal government's not going to come in and say, hey, you broke the law. This is illegal, you shouldn't do it, so we're going to tax you about it. So I think it's a good unofficial poll, and I think our voters will respond positively if they had the opportunity. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I think, last session, I believe it was Representative Griffey had a bill to put polls on the ballot, and it was voted down. I think the argument at that point was, and I think what Chairman Crawford may have been referring to, is if we put one poll, basically it's what it is, it's a question, a poll, then all the cities and counties and everybody's going to start putting it on there, and it's going to fill up whether we should have curbs pave the streets or recalls or anything like that. They're going to start putting the polls on the ballots and start filling them up with local polls. I think that's what they was referred to, and that was the fear in the past. That's what the argument was last year, Representative.
Well, since this has been a national, statewide, and local conversation, I think it would be good to ask the constituents of the state of Tennessee about this particular subject matter because it's been so talked about, it's been so debated, and before we go forward with other things, I think it's important to ask our constituents because a lot of times we, as the representatives, we are in our silos, so to speak, and maybe our constituents may feel a different way on the subject matter than we do personally. So this bill does not reflect on how we feel about the subject of marijuana personally. It's merely to just ask our constituents what they think.
I think on actual bills, not your bill, but on actual bills to legalize medical marijuana, if you ask the question to the general public, are you for legalizing medical marijuana? A huge percentage says yes, but when you say, do you want a doctor's prescription and a pharmacy to fill it versus a vape shop, it goes way down. So I think when you have a generic question on even a regular poll, it's deceptive if you don't ask all the details of what their alternatives are and what the legislation would do. But are there any other questions? Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. More so of a statement. Even if we wanted to, we could amend this bill and make it a statewide referendum in the 2024 elections. And basically you bypass each county and you put it out there. And again, it's a question. And the question isn't to say, do you vote that we legalize it? It's just a question of what do you think about it? It's a question. And I would suggest we move it forward and continue to have conversation about it. Because it is one of the, I guess, top issues, when it comes to this question of the legalization of medical marijuana or recreational marijuana. And look at what a majority of the states in this country have done. And my argument, again, it's not as if they're waiting on the federal government to make a decision. And right now, the federal government is not going to make a decision. So I think it's up to us to make that decision. Thank you.
Oh, Representative.
Thank you. So there's roughly 41 states that have already passed some type of marijuana legislation, and all but 2 of our neighboring states have already done something in this particular subject matter. So even before, of course, I have my thoughts about it, but even before we do what other states have already done, I think it's good to merely ask the question to our constituents.
Any other further questions? Seeing none, we will proceed on to vote on HB 0173. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Nay. Bill fails.
Thank you,
Sorry,
Chairman
Mr.
and committee.
Chisholm. Next up is item number 8, HB 0603 by Representative Powell. We have a motion and a second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. So it's really come to my attention and members of my district and my community that the littering of political campaign signs has really gotten out of control. When I used to go to other states, I would see signs in trees and on the side of the road, on the interstates, and I would say to myself, thank goodness Tennessee doesn't act like that, and we don't allow that. And unfortunately, over the years, I've come to see that these political signs have gotten out of control. And personally, I had an election, and my opponent, to my knowledge, did not put a single campaign sign up in a legal spot. They were all in the right-of-way. They were in public property, and nothing was really done about it. And I get that it's up to locals to remedy the situation on some level, but the issue is, some of our locals are scared because they think that this is a freedom of speech issue. They don't understand if the election is going on. They're not fully aware of the law. And so I've really looked at this and said, I know everyone before this committee, you work hard. We work hard to get those campaign sign locations. We ask our voters and our constituents, can I put a sign out in your yard? And I really pride myself, and I can't say that I've never had one of my campaign members or somebody on my campaign put up an illegal sign, but if I have, I've taken it down. And I think it's imperative that we protect the beauty of this state and we don't let these campaign signs overwhelm our communities. And this is an issue that I continue to see. And I think one of the roots of the problem is that in the code, there is no ability to fine folks for placing these illegal signs. And so, because that is specific, and I'm not saying this is perfect, and actually I want to, Mr. Chairman, if I could make these comments and happy to answer any questions, but maybe continue to kind of work on getting this right and do this. But if you're putting up illegal signs, then those should be removed, especially after the election. Because I can tell you right now, I can show you signs here in my city where people have put up illegal signs and they've zip tied them. They've tied them to utility poles and they've tied them to stop signs, and that's endangering the public. But also, they're very tough to remove. And the people that are responsible with keeping our communities clean, they don't know necessarily if that election is still taking place, if that sign, why it's there, and they're afraid to take it down. So I think there needs to be a mechanism in place in our code, and I've called this bill by essentially signs for right-of-way signs, fines for right-of-way signs bill. There needs to be a mechanism in place where people leave these signs up, that they are served and given notice that they need to remove them or else they're going to be fined. This shouldn't be on the taxpayers and you and me paying public workers to go pick these signs up. The candidates need to get a message and say, you need to pull your signs down. I wish from day one they put these signs up even the election's going on, but at least let's start with a small step and tell folks after the election's over, you've got to take these right-of-way signs down, and if you don't, you're going to get fined. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I know everyone on this committee appreciates this issue, but we want to protect the beauty of this state, and I think that it is time to look at fines for these illegal signs. And with that, I stand ready to answer any questions from the committee.
Chairman Crawford.
Fines for signs. Did you come up with that?
I did. Fines for right-of-way
Okay.
signs. It's got a nice flow, doesn't it?
That's clever, yes. My question is, as I was reading through here, Representative Powell, I see that it's going to be a civil penalty of $50 per day per parcel, per sign. Where would that money go? Would that go to the local's general fund? Would it go to the election commission? Where would that fine? money go?
So those are the kind of specific, nuanced specifics that I really would want to kind of work out with this committee and get with each of you individually and figure out maybe a best solution. And maybe this can't be done this year. Maybe this takes, time to develop. I think ultimately I'm up to the will of the committee and what you think is best. I know you know local government obviously very, very well. I just want to make sure that the fines are in place so that the candidates take that seriously and they will do their best to remove those signs. And if not, then yes, I'm open. As it's written, to answer your question, as the bill is written, and I want to continue to work on it, the county commission would meet, and I realize there's a cost with them meeting. So maybe there's a better way to do this and let somebody else sort of collect this money. But ultimately, in my opinion, we need to, the candidates themselves need to be responsible and know that they're going to get fined if they don't get these signs down.
I don't think there's anybody that's ever run an election campaign that would argue that point, because it is bad to drive a month past the election and see signs that are still in the right of way and everything. So I agree. We probably need to do more than we're doing, but that seems like to me that would have to be addressed before we could even move forward, because let's say you contract with a private company to get these up, and you're going to have people out there throwing signs up everywhere because they're going to get $50 for every one of them signs. So I think that's something we probably need to look at and address before we really go further on this bill, but that's just my opinion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I think one other thing to look at, and I know you've got right-of-way and public property. The real other question is who legally can be fined. If you have a citizen who stops in, let's say, a generic party headquarters and picks a sign up and places it on their own property, and you don't have any knowledge of it, and therefore you don't know where it's at to pick it up, who should be fined? Really, you got the candidate or candidate committee, but what if? And also, if it's right-of-way laws are different in each community. Some just has a legal right-of-way, and some actually, like the state of Tennessee, purchases the right-of-way. But some locals just say they have the right-of-way to control that area without purchasing it. So you ask most homeowners in front of their home, they said, that's my land to the curb, not the city's. But once we put a sign on a person's private property, it becomes their property. Is it even legal to fine a candidate since it's no longer their property? Technically, you've given the sign away. They allow us to collect it, but technically they own the sign once we put it on their property. Would we be the one that could legally be fined? So I don't know. Those are just questions asked legal. Chairman Moon. Okay. Any other questions? What do you want to do with your bill?
Mr. Chairman, if I could roll this 2 weeks, I'd like to get with each of you and get with legal and kind of figure out, and I'm kind of leaning towards, really establishing the ability to fine and then leaving this up to the locals to basically create their own rules and figure that out. But if I could roll this 2 weeks and get with each member of the committee and kind of think through this and figure out a way we can do it, I appreciate you each expressing interest in making sure that we deal with this issue and recognize that it is a problem. I think we're all on the same page. We're just get together and go over the logistics and legalities. I'd appreciate 2 week roll, Mr. Chairman.
Seeing no objections, the sponsors requested a 2 week roll. Seeing no objections, we'll roll the bill HB 0603, 2 weeks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next up is item number 9, HB 1398 by Representative Harris. We have a motion and a second on the bill.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you to the committee. Oftentimes, you'll see where we post publicly your obituary. We'll post your foreclosure in the paper. We'll post about your property. And so House Bill 1398 would just have us to post on the commission's websites a list of all the purged registered records, voters, and it doesn't have to be updated during the period time of an actual election. So during early voting and election, we wouldn't have to update from the county side of things. Currently, after talking to the Secretary of State, they don't send out notices for purged voters to people who have died or who are felons, but they try their best to send out a notice of some sort to people who may potentially be on that purged list. A lot of times those people don't get that information because they don't live in the state oftentimes anymore. But this would just put it on the commission website so that way people can see it publicly.
We have a speaker. One speaker has requested to speak on the bill. Is there any objections going out of session to hear from the speaker? Then we'll come back to the sponsor to close. We'll go out of session, and I start to say Representative Director Mark Goins with the state elections.
Coordinator of Elections, Mark Goins, for the great state of Tennessee. I understand what Representative Harris is doing, and he has had some conversations with Secretary Hargett. And I was standing with Secretary Hargett when we had one of those discussions, and then we also met with the Senate Speaker as well, our sponsor as well. The issue is this: if you post this online and you've committed a felony, you're probably not going to want to see your name online. That's one of the reasons that someone gets purged. Used to be that this information was published in the newspaper, and some, this has been some time ago, some did post it online. The voters complained. Administratively, as far as election officials, we've released this list already. You can purchase this list. It's just not so public. But what happened when it was being published, the folks that had someone in their family die, they didn't necessarily like to see that in the newspaper, that someone, that brought back up the memory that someone had passed. Obviously, felons, somebody, they would complain as well. Normally, the majority of the purges are from moves, and those folks are sent notice, but the voters may not receive that notice because if the information we've received that this individual has moved, then theoretically they're not going to receive it. So we send them a non-forwardable confirmation notice. And the notice simply says, we have evidence you don't live there. Let us know if you live there. And then obviously if they've moved, it's not going to go to them. But the other thing that is on this, and I didn't get a chance to talk to Representative Harris, it's something I kind of noticed as I was walking over through here to the meeting. This would also require the date of birth. And so if you're putting the name out there and the date of birth, there could be identity theft type issues. Also, some people just don't want people to know how old they are. And so you've got those things as well. So that's literally what you would be doing. You'd be posting this information on the website. In theory, it's not, it's not something that we don't mind doing. I just want to make sure everybody understands if this bill passes, this is the calls that election officials are going to receive, and this is the calls that you are going to receive. Why is my information made public? Why do people know how old I am? Why did somebody see that, I got purged because I got convicted of a felony or a family member? So I just want to make sure everybody understood what that was doing. Once again, if somebody wants this information, you can purchase it, and in fact, it is purchased. People buy that information.
I have one question that's one of the concerns that popped up, that it's somewhat vague, and maybe you or legal or the sponsor can clarify this. But a lot of our counties do not have, since you have to post this on websites, we still have a good number of counties that do not have websites. And other counties, even large ones, have a subcontractor or another method of updating, maybe your office, updating their websites. And larger counties may not be able to do it within the 5-day period that this requires. Now, Physical Review stated that this isn't of any cost, that it's not required, but the way the bill is written, it seems like it would require websites to be established for those who don't have them. Is this a concern, or do you know what the expense might be?
So I did read it as requiring every county to have an election commission website. There's at least 10 counties that don't have a website. And if that's the case, if it does require it, and I know that the committee attorney is here, we can ask his opinion as well. But when I read, I think it does require an A5. Physical read it, they did not. If that is the case, that it requires those 10 counties to go out and get a website, we do have real-life estimates based on smaller counties in this jurisdiction that that have had to create websites. And essentially, if all 10 had to do it, it's going to be roughly $50,000 recurring to maintain those sites. Now, that's collectively, and it's $48,000, I think, to build the sites. So the first year would be $100,000 that the counties would have to pay, and then ongoing it'd be about $50,000. If I'm reading that incorrectly, then I stand corrected. But we did tell the fiscal department that we read it that way, they read it differently, and I could be wrong.
I know I had a text message from my Rutherford County election administrator, and he had stated that his office does not have control of adding content to the website. I assume it's added by controlled by their local IT department, which is not a part of the election commission. And a county, Rutherford County size, which is approaching, 400,000, that we purge people daily who become deceased and register in another jurisdiction right now, but they don't have control of their website, and they'd have trouble meeting the demand. So I guess what you're saying, that would be a concern even for counties that currently have websites, if they could meet the deadline.
Yeah, certainly your larger counties, they typically have an IT department that's separate. I would consider Rutherford County, they do have an IT. I know that, in fact, I communicate with the IT director myself, and if we have some type of change that we need the counties to make. I've talked, Cody York is the IT director there. Some of your smaller counties, they have a little bit more control, but some of your larger counties do not. So the timing could be, that's not something I'd really focused on. I'd not heard that from Mr. Farley, but obviously he's going to communicate with you. But I could definitely see that as well, being the timing of the bill, because it does require 5 days after a purge has taken place.
And Representative Miller, I believe you're next on the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For clarification, you did say that your department, an individual could purchase now from your department the purge registration records. Is that correct?
That's correct. You can also get it from the local level. It's just like any voter data that you want to purchase. Like the list that typically people get active voters so they can do mail-outs. Some folks get the purge list to see if there's anyone that they can come back and register.
So what can currently be purchased from your department, would that include the names, addresses, ages as well, et cetera, et cetera?
It includes everything that's on the current purchase list that y'all have, and you can get that information.
Okay. So what would necessarily prevent an individual or a group or anyone come to you, purchase that information, and based on the power of social media, assimilate that information from their own base?
Well, there's an affidavit, as you're probably aware, that you sign when you get this information. You sign it under penalty of perjury that you're only going to use that information for political purposes. And if you do use it for other purposes, you're guilty of a misdemeanor.
Okay. Thank you.
So if it's posted on the web, you don't have to sign that. It'd just be available for the public to copy, even if we put a disclaimer on there.
It would be an in-round, it'd be up to the district attorney to look and see if there's a violation. Obviously, I don't have prosecutor authority, but I can't, it's hard for me to come up with a political reason why someone would take a voter list and publish it for the public to see. I mean, that would be up for the district attorney to look into and see if that's a political purpose or not. Normally, a political purpose is to mail someone information on why they should vote for you or vote against someone.
Chairman Moon, you had a question? Oh, okay. All right. Any other questions? And I believe before we go back into regular session, while we're out of session, did anyone, either Mr. Goins or anyone on the committee, have a question of legal?
I mean,
all right.
Well, that's the only question I guess I would have is the way that the bill is written, would you see it applying to all? Do you see it as requiring all counties to require a website?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Josh Hughes from Legal Services. I do read it as being mandatory for each county election commission. It says that each county election commission shall post on the commission's website. And so it does not give any reason for me to think that this would not apply to a county commission that does not have a website.
All right,
That's consistent with how I would read it.
And you know what the cost would be for them to, the ones that don't have? How many counties don't have websites currently?
It's 10 or 11. I think it's 10. I think it's 11. I was reading the note and they said 10, so maybe there's one that I'm mistaken on, but at least 10. And it's, like I say, these are smaller counties. And the smallest county that we've recently had get a website was Unicoi County. And the setup was around $4,800, plus the maintenance is $4,800. So roughly $10,000 per county per year for the first year. And then ongoing, it would be, the maintenance would be, I think it's 50,000 ongoing, recurring, and it was 100,000 the first year. 50,000 that was set up, and then 50,000 was maintenance, and that's collectively. That's assuming there's 10 counties.
And we're assuming the small counties don't have an IT department, which I imagine most do not.
Oh, I know they don't, because we would like for the smaller counties to have a website, but it becomes a security issue, and it's not a security issue necessarily to get into the system. It's a security issue of making sure that someone doesn't do something to deface that website to hurt the credibility of the election. They can't change the results or anything like that, can't do anything with the voter registration. But what someone could do is, if you didn't have the proper security and proper maintenance of that website, on election night they could have some havoc. You know, they could raise some havoc, and they could switch, Lee's votes with his opponent's votes or whatever by hacking a website. They've not really switched the results, but if somebody went to that website, they would see something differently. You know, it's a little bit more easier to do that. And so if you don't have the proper security, if you don't have an IT department like Rutherford County or willing to invest in the security funds, it can create an issue.
Have any other questions of Mr. Goins? If not, we'll go back into session. Thank you. All right, we're back to Representative Harris on your bill.
Thank you, Chairman. And to the committee, after listening to a lot of what was said, I spoke with the Secretary of State earlier, and I believe Mr. Goins was also with him, and I kind of wish they would have told me that they were going to be speaking as well, or that some of these concerns earlier. But what we'll do is I'm going to ask to roll it for 2 weeks so that way I can bring back an amendment to make it to where it's only going to be from the Secretary of State's office that requires it. And that way that removes it from the 95 counties, as well as taking the dates part of it off of it as well. And I'll come back in 2 weeks. If
Before we roll, Chairman Doggett, you had a question?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm just curious, and you may have already stated this, what is the actual purpose of this bill?
Just for the transparency of just being able to access and see that, hey, maybe I'm on this list that I need to maybe follow up. I also work in local government too. And sometimes with people who their family member may have passed away, we post online that their property may be up during tax sale or something. We post all that publicly. So somebody who lives in Florida may be able to say, oh, I see my mother's home is posted online. I might need to call and see if I can pay the taxes on it. Those are examples of why we post things publicly online, so that way people can see that maybe it's affecting them in some way. And so this will be an opportunity for people to have a way to know if they didn't see it in the mail. I pay my MLG&W bill online because I don't use paper billing. I don't go check the mail all the time. So this is just ways so people can have other access to know whether they are on that purge list by any chance.
Any other questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman Doggett.
Thank you. Would it also be a way for someone to gather intel of those who are not active voters and go solicit them to come back and to vote?
That wasn't the intent. I think people who do that usually go and pay the $40 to get the voter registration files if they want to do that.
But they won't have to now. If this bill passed, they would get it for free.
They would just get the purge list. It would just be posted online for a person. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so they could get the entire list of who had been purged and go out and solicit them to come back and register to vote.
And as part of the amendment, I'll probably put in something similar to what you mentioned earlier, to where if someone utilized it for something other than the intent of what this bill was for, that it would be of some type of misdemeanor as well.
And also about the date of birth, it has a lot of concerns that, I mean, it was already mentioned when we were out of session, but putting that information out there on the internet, that could, somebody might be able to open a credit card or something, identity theft at least. But I don't understand why that we would want to publish this and force the election commissions to put it out there when someone could already come and buy that list if they were using it for political purposes, or to engage more voters. They could make that purchase for the list instead of giving it to them for free. But I'm not going to be supporting it as written. But just make you aware of those concerns that I have.
Any other questions? If not,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's just for, again, clarification from the standpoint of individuals that are purged. Once they are purged, are they ever notified that they're purged? Mr. Goins may have answered that. I don't know. Well, are they notified at all by local county commissions or by state commission that?
I'll if not, we can call Representative, we can call Mr. Goins back. I think that the main reason they're purged is either they're deceased or they've moved out of county. If they've moved out of county and haven't left a forward address, see what they do, they mail cards out to people.
Right.
And then the ones they don't get back that are inactive, they purge every so often. So if they haven't left a forwarding address, they have no way of knowing where they're at. So they purge them, and then if they were there but they never responded, they show up on election day and they want to vote, so you've been purged, they let them do a paper ballot.
Right.
And they set it aside and verify that they're still registered that day and it's still counted, is how I believe the system works.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, you would requested to roll 2 weeks.
Absolutely.
The
Thanks so much.
sponsors requested to roll the bill 2 weeks. Seeing no objections, the bill HB 1398. Oh, excuse me. Huh? Okay.
I'd make a motion that it would be rolled to the final calendar, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion and a second to roll the bill HB 98 to the final calendar of this session, of this year.
Yes, sir, of this committee.
Yes. Seeing no objections, we'll roll it to the final calendar. That gives you an opportunity,
Great.
it gives you more time to fix it around 2 weeks, and we'll take it back up on our final day to address our legislation.
Thank you so much.
Any other business before the committee? Any other announcements or personal orders? Seeing none, do I hear a motion to adjourn? We are adjourned.